Like most skills that we learn, woodworking seems to have these stair-stepping milestones where people dramatically improve both their design and, well, how stuff turns out. And adding curves into your furniture is one of those milestones. So today, let's talk about one of the most common tools we use for adding curves, the Spokeshave. So first I'm going to talk about different Spokeshaves, and then we'll talk about how to use them. My first Spokeshave was this Veritas one, and it kind of ruined me because there are very few items in the woodworking realm that can do multiple things well. And Spokeshaves generally come in three different types. You have a flat bottom soled, a curved bottom soled, and then you have a concave sole. A lot of looks like little horseshoes. I don't really use that one for anything. I don't really see any use for it for the stuff I make. But this one right here is what they call convertible, where it's both a flat and a curved bottom sole. And it works pretty well at both of them, which kind of spoiled me because all of a sudden this was one of the very first woodworking tools I bought, and it kind of put into my mind that, hey, you could buy stuff that does multiple things well. That's normally not the case. Anyways, my second Spokeshave was a kit I bought for Ron Hawk. And if he still makes these kits, I'll put a link down below. It's a really great kit, and this is the first woodworking tool I ever made. And it is another flat bottom sole, but this is my coarse cutting one. And if you are getting into Spokeshaves, it's very nice to have a separate Spokeshave you can set aside that you just use for coarse work, something to really hog off material. And then you can go to one that you've got set up for finer work. Now, Spokeshaves come in a couple different form factors. This one right here is a bevel up style. The blade is flat, and you actually ride on the blade itself, and the bevel's on the upside. And then you have bevel down style planes, where the sole, you can see the bevel's on the bottom side. Just like hand planes, there's lots of controversy on which is better, which is worse. In my opinion, the wood doesn't care, so just work with whatever you got. Now, these are kind of a traditional style, and most of the vintage ones are probably going to be bevel up, and a Spokeshave mimics just about every other woodworking tool, where you're going to have a bevel that you're going to ride on, and then the cutting edge, and then some kind of sole or plane. Now, in its essence, all a Spokeshave is a draw knife with a depth stop. The depth stop is actually the sole of the plane, and just like the hand plane, the bottom of it is its depth stop, preventing the blade from plunging into the wood. And as I said earlier, the planes of these typically come in either a flat style or one that's kind of convex for doing interior corners, and the flat ones do the exterior corners. Now, when you set these things up, you actually want to set the depth of your blade in reference to the flatness, the horizontal plane of your bevel. It really doesn't matter how far up and down it goes, it's all in relationship to that bevel. But there are a couple of theories on how to set up that blade. Now, this is my rough cutting Spokeshave, and it's the one I hog a lot of material off to get the initial shape. And if you can see, here's my blade, and as I bring it down into parallel with the sole, you can tell that this side of the blade protrudes a lot more than that side. By having this long blade in here with one side protruding more, I can actually control how much I'm taking off of the wood. So in the initial stages, I'll actually start on this side of my blade and work my way down finer and finer cuts until I'm getting the general shape I want. Then I bring out my secondary one, which I would use with a really fine cut that's even all the way across. And I'm not even sure you can see that in the camera. Just a slight shadow as it passes over. And that allows me to fully refine whatever shape I'm doing to the outside. Now, how you make adjustments to these styles of planes is basically you have two screws. This one right here controls the depth, and you can raise and lower it. Whether it's actually connected to the blade itself, but then you have this depth stop that rises up or down. And as you can see, so whenever you lock it down in, lock the two together, they kind of work like two bolts locking it down. And yeah, I raised that one up. So if I want to lower it, I loosen it, I lower the depth stop, and that makes the blade protrude out. And then I can tighten this up and it locks it all together. Really, really simple design. This one right here is really complex and finicky to set up. Now what you have right here is my flat sole on this side, and I can take this piece off and this top section is rounded. Can you tell that? So if I ever want a rounded sole, I just flip it over. But in order to make any kind of adjustments, you have to loosen these two screws, adjust it, and then tighten it back up. And that's kind of a real pain, which is why I originally made this one right here so I could have two of them and I could set this one up for my finest of cuts. I still keep this one around because I really liked it and it was the first really nice tool I ever bought, so it's kind of got some sentimental value to it. But I don't use it that much often. I now use these two bevel down planes from Veritas just because they are so much more comfortable. And to adjust them, it's a simple matter of loosening the lever cap. It works very much like a hand plane. And then you can adjust these two wheels to pull it back a little bit or push it forward. Now I will tell you this, if you're backing back up, before you do anything else, you need to bring it back forward. Because there is a little bit of slop in these. Meaning it moves about a quarter of a turn before it engages either the top or the bottom. You have to have that in order to get the blade on there. If you don't push it all the way forward to kind of lock it forward, the blade itself will push back against it. And that's the same thing with hand planes. You always want to, even after you black the blade out, you want to go forward a little bit. And then you just tighten the lever cap. This is so much easier to adjust. I think this is why this style of hand spoke shave has become so much more popular. Plus the fact it's very easy to sharpen. And I'll probably do that in a future video. Now, these bevel up planes, I do find that they are harder to teach students because they want to ride the blade flat on the workpiece, when in actuality you need to ride this on the workpiece. And the front bevel is actually canted forward, I don't know if you could tell, a little bit more than the blade itself. It's actually angled forward a little bit. So you kind of, when you use these things, you tilt them forward. And you can use a spoke shave either pushing it or pulling it, and that's why they are this shape. So when you use a spoke shave, for like if you're doing the curve on a small bedside table, a lot of times you will curve the inside of the leg and leave the outside square to get a nice round portion so that the light reflects on it in a really cool manner, and the curve adds the taper you're looking for. Well, you basically come over, and I've got a bevel up hand plane, so I will put the bevel down, and then you can see me tilt it forward. That forward tilt actually engages the blade so you can take your shavings off. And once, like everything, you want to go with the grain, so I'm feeling a little tear out right there, so I can actually reverse it, put the blade down flat, tilt it forward, and engage it. And once again, this is my coarse cutter, so I can take off fairly thick shavings. And they get thin, finer and finer the farther over I go. So it allows me to adjust the shape. Now I've got my thin set up, but once again, flat and then at a slight angle. So you put the blade down flat, then tilt it forward, and you'll feel a little click. And these will take the finer and finer shavings, so you're getting those little whiffs coming out. You will want to occasionally clean them out because they do get clogged up quite easily. But fairly easy. Okay? With the bevel ups, it's a very similar setup, except the plain blade is fully flat there. So you actually just use it completely flat and the blade protrudes down. I have found that this is a little bit easier for beginners to grasp because there's none of that tilt that you have to do. And as you can see, my thumbs are right by the blade, and I push forward with my thumbs. The front fingers kind of keep it flat. So propulsion, direction. Same with the back. If you switch it, the fingers become the propulsion, the thumbs become the direction. Now, end grain is a little bit different. You don't want to tear out the end grain, so a lot of times you want to keep it at an angle. And what I will do with these is I use my bottom half as a pivot point, and I can kind of rotate it around. And that gives me a nice skewing action, so it gets a really clean cut, even on Southern Yellow Pine. And it's also not uncommon for me to use my flat bottoms to add chamfers, because I seem to have a better idea of where to control that 45 degree to get the look I want. And it takes such a fine cut that you can adjust it. And there is a theory on like shelves and stuff like that, that if you put a kind of curve on the underside of a shelf, it makes it look straighter. Just the slightest of curves. Because the eye just, it's a phenomenon of the eye. So there you go. A quick overview of several different styles of spoke shaves, how to adjust them, and a couple different hand grips. And let me tell you, curves are one of those aspects of furniture design where you just go to the next level. They don't really add any functionality to furniture. Tapered legs with a curve, not going to make it more stable. But the way light reflects off of a nice, smooth curve changes the entire personality of your work and just seems to take it to the next level. So if you get a chance, try out a few spoke shaves in your work. Speaking of taking your work to the next level, today's bonus is about a carving instructor. But before we get there, please, if you've enjoyed this video, do me a favor. Like, favorite, subscribe, do all those social medias. Share it with your friends. And if you started getting a lot out of this series or any of my longer form videos, which I'm more known for, please consider visiting my website to figure out ways you can support it. Not only do I have a lot more information there in little bits, but I have a web store where you can buy some of my own artwork or some merch, such as these t-shirts and hats. These kind of sales really do help me out to buy material, to do bigger projects, and funds the time away for production woodworking for making these videos. Now, if you want to take your craft to the very best level you can, there are certain times where you just need to carve stuff. Now, it might not be anything intricate like big flying eagles or anything like that. It could be just a little green and green cloud lift. But carving is one of those elements that brings stuff to your work that sets you a little bit above everybody else. And one of the best carving instructors I know of is Mary May. She is one of the few people that have done several different apprentices in different types of carving, from marble to woodwork, and she is known for doing a lot of the carving for period piece replicators. A lot of woodworkers send their legs to her to get them carved and stuff like that. She is a phenomenal production carver and has been doing this kind of work since she was a kid. But what I like about it is she's incredibly intelligent, but can articulate her technique so a simpleton like me can understand it. She does run an online wood carving school, but she also has a lot of free information out there in her YouTube videos, and she has a program where you can sign up and get some free lessons from her to see her teaching techniques, which you're really going to enjoy, and what she covers. And what's really cool is the way she teaches it, you don't have to have a huge wall of thousands of different gouges. She will show you the techniques to use a small kit to do just about everything. If you're interested in carving at all, I highly suggest you check out not only her website, but her YouTube channel.